Did we lose Mary Elena?
Mary Elena, if you're still here, I believe you're muted. And Mary Elena, you might double check that your cell phone isn't muted as well since you're calling in.
I am not muted on my phone nor the computer. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Hear me. Hello, hello.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Yes, you're coming through loud.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Can you hear me?
We can. Can you hear us?
I can. I just had a little bit of technical problems, but I'm back. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to just start from scratch. Today, the Metro Arts Commission and Metro Arts staff are joining by conference call. In a moment, we will call roll of all members present. This meeting will be recorded and posted within 48 hours to Metro Nashville YouTube channel. All action items voted on today's meeting will be reconfirmed at the next in-person meeting of the committee. Public comments previously submitted will be read by Metro Arts staff member Grace Wright. A Metro Arts staff member is also available at the Bellevue Conference Center at the Metro Office Building located at 1417 Murfreesboro Pike. Now, I encourage all participants on this call to stay muted and just use the raise hand WebEx function if you would like to speak. If any commissioners are having some technical difficulties with any of these functions, please let us know before we proceed. Okay. And now we will call the meeting to order. I'm going to do roll call. So if I call your name, please say present. Commissioner Bonnie Dowell. Okay. Commissioner Clay Haynes.
Present.
Commissioner Campbell West.
Present.
Commissioner Hope Stringer.
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Jane Alvis.
Present.
Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Marcus Whitney.
Present.
Commissioner Marianne, if you don't mind muting and just say present.
I didn't hear you ask. I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mattia Powell.
Present.
Commissioner Sherry Nichols-Susie. Okay, Sherry, if you can.
This is Sherry. I am present.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Will Cheek.
Present.
Okay. And am I missing anybody? Nikki Kaufman. Oh, Nikki. Yes, Nikki. I'm sorry, Commissioner Nikki Kaufman. Okay. Thank you so much. So now we need to call for a motion that the meeting agenda constitutes essential business of this body. A meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans, considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and it is permitted under the Governor's Executive Order number 16. Can somebody please call for a motion?
This is Jane. I move approval.
This is Bonnie. I second.
Thank you so much. Okay. If anyone has any comments on this motion, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Okay. So I need to do a roll call. If Commissioner, please say your name and your vote. Well, I'm going to call everybody. So Commissioner Bonnie.
I vote yes.
I think we lost you, Mary Lou.
To him then. Jane.
Yes.
Marcus. Marcus.
Yes, I'm sorry, you broke up.
Oh, that's okay. We're just calling for your vote on the motion and second.
Okay, yes, aye.
Okay. Mattia.
Yes.
Nikki.
Yes.
Will.
Yes.
Hope. Okay, I'll come back to Hope in a second. Campbell.
Yes.
Jim.
Schmidt, yes.
Sherry.
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Hope.
This is Campbell. I think Hope answered for me when my name was called.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So,
Sorry,
okay,
Campbell.
so Campbell,
No
you
worries.
say
Hi,
yes
Hope.
too? Okay,
Uh,
I'm sorry. Okay, and I believe Clay is back.
I vote yes. Yeah.
Okay.
You're breaking up significantly, Chairwoman.
Okay, let me try. I am not sure what the problem is. I'm very sorry. Okay, my apologies. I will try my best. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. Yes, we're good to go. And now I will pass the meeting over to Emily for an Arts in Action update.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to see some of your faces and hear your voices. I hope you've had a nice summer. It's an unusual summer. If we can go ahead and advance to the next slide. The end of summer means that our DIAL Fellowship has concluded for the year. To refresh your memories, the Summer 2020 Diversity and Arts Leadership, or DIAL Fellowship Program, it was a collaboration between Metro Arts, Americans for the Arts, and the New Jersey State Council on the Arts. We had 10 undergraduate fellows from backgrounds traditionally underrepresented in arts leadership. They met 3 times a week virtually for panels with arts administration's experts from across the country. They had technical training workshops and community building opportunities over those 10 weeks. Grace Wright helped facilitate the fellowship, and she shared that one of her favorite memories was the penultimate session when the fellows presented their individual capstone projects. So not only were the projects beautiful and impressive, ranging from writing and videography to publications, but the support and advice the fellows offered each other was inspiring. Each fellow was not only brilliant, but also compassionate, thoughtful, and sincerely eager to build a better world. So we appreciate that. The projects are really impressive. I've included the thumbnails of a couple here on the slide, and we're working on gathering them in one place online for everyone to experience. So we'll share that with you when it's available. Next slide, please. We've also wrapped up Opportunity Now. And as you probably know, that is the mayor's offices and Metro Nashville's youth employment program. And Metro Arts administers Opportunity Now experiences with arts nonprofits. So like everyone, our partners had to make a pandemic pivot. So some of those experiences turned virtual, Some of them went hybrid, and some of our past partners determined they couldn't make that transition. But we still ended up with 8 project sites, 134 students, and in the photos I've included Prado Studios and Martha O'Brien Center students made that transition. They conducted all of their early curriculum virtually. So the students learned about the process of creating mosaic public art, and that includes community engagement and design. They did all that virtually, and they all came together in the studio, physically distanced and masked for the physical assembly of the mosaics. Next slide, please. Some of you may have seen online our current call to artists and creatives living in Madison, Madison on My Mind. This is an NEA-funded grant specifically to lift up Madison. So it's smaller grants, $500 to $2,500 to infuse income into the Madison creative community while honoring and uplifting Madison businesses and public spaces. The call is currently open through August 24th, and we're looking at a likely extension of the call through September to give us a chance to amplify communications and do some targeted outreach to communities within Madison. You can learn more at the bit.ly link that I created, so bit.ly/Madison on My Mind. Media mentions, next. The Nashville Daily podcast interviewed Caroline. The host talked with her about public art in Nashville, learned a little bit about our public art collection and the arts in general in Nashville. Seems like a pretty handy podcast if you're new to town or if you just want to dig into some very specific areas of metro government or sort of hidden gems in Nashville. We were also mentioned in WPLN's election night coverage. They mentioned our special edition voter sticker and the social media excitement surrounding it, which leads us to our final highlight. Voter sticker selfies. We had, let's see if that video works, maybe. We had dozens, more than 60 shared selfies with our women's suffrage centennial sticker. Locations actually ran out of the stickers during early voting and on election day, and we were able to work with the election commission to get them more. So these are just some of the photos from early voting and the August 6th election day. You can view the highlight tab on our Instagram page to see them all. The next opportunity to get a sticker and to vote. Early voting begins October 14th for the November 3rd election. And we've ordered more stickers for this round. So please feel free to tag us in your own voter sticker selfies. That is all I have for highlights.
Thank you so much, Emily. And before we move on to action number 1, I just neglected to mention that we will not be approving minutes until our next in-person meeting. So I just wanted to say that. And now I will pass the meeting to Janine.
Hi, everyone. Nice to connect with you all. Grace, can we have the next slide? We'll be first discussing the FY21 Thrive guidelines that have been updated based on conversations in staff and with participants, of course. Next slide. I just want to give you just a highlight of some of the updates that were made, and you all should have copies of the full proposed guidelines. So, and I've included some page numbers if you need a reference. So first off, of course, we've updated the deadlines, which are September 15th and January 26th. Right after, if approved, we'll move pretty quickly, release the application tomorrow, and staff is ready and has been preparing to do everything, the panel review, et cetera, if approved. So, but it is a quick turnaround. Inclusion of as needed social distancing or remote plans as part of the feasibility criteria. You'll find that on pages 3 and 5. Required background checks for applicants working with youth or in youth settings. And this matches our Opportunity Now and also our restorative arts protocols. So we're just kind of standardizing things. We're moving program dates to the fiscal year to match other funding programs and Metro Finance. And we're requiring proof of Davidson County residency or employment. These will include driver's license, mail, other evidence with approval. And that this is something we did for the Thrive April 2020. And it was just a good thing to have. If we require anything, if it's we should have proof. So that's why we're including that. A pretty major update is that we are now including cultural equity as part of the scoring criteria. You'll see that on page 5. The language is taken almost exactly from our approved and posted Metro Arts Equity Statement, and the total points will be 5 out of 20. So it will be balanced against or balanced and the same as the other criteria. So arts and artistic excellence and feasibility and community engagement. And then finally, there is a clarified application overview timeline, and this is so that applicants involved, many are new to Metro Arts, kind of see the full scope of the program and the project. Next slide, please. So just to summarize the updates we've made, there's been a clarification and streamlining of process. There is now articulation of specific expectations around equity and feasibility. There are increased protections for youth and the general public, and deadlines that balance funding well-developed projects quickly, but also giving an additional opportunity in January for those who aren't ready to apply yet, and then hopefully giving everyone enough time to complete the projects by the end of the year. Next slide. So with that, Grants and Funding Committee recommends approval of the FY21 Thrive Guidelines. So with that, I will pass it back to Mary Elena and Grace for public comment.
Thank you so much. Let's see, were there any public comments on this motion submitted by email?
No, there were not.
Okay. Are there any members of the public present with public comments?
There's no one present currently.
That is the end of public comments for this agenda item. We will no longer be taking comments regarding the subject. Now, are there any clarifying questions from commissioners about this motion or presentation? Okay. I don't see anybody raising hands. Okay, Jim has a question or comment.
I have one question. So we're adding the background check requirement.
Correct.
And I know that most of these projects are smaller organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to, I know that background checks come with a cost, and I assume we're not paying the cost of that. So is that either, if for some reason an organization that's dealing with youth, and I'm not sure if this is, the normal course of procedure for these organizations or not, but if we're going to add additional cost onto that, is that going to be some kind of burden on these organizations?
This is such a great question, and this is, we've debated this, and so this has been, it's pretty standard practice for youth involved organizations and youth in different settings. The workarounds that we've used in Opportunity Now and Restorative Arts are, so for the most part, these organizations should have them ready. So copies will be, as long, if copies within the year will be acceptable. So most of these organizations like work in MNPS, if they've worked in, or have maybe a community center, hopefully, but that's a really great question for these smaller organizations. We just want to make sure that, that the applicants who are proposing to work with youth are, have that capacity and, understand the responsibility of that. And so, and we just want to make sure that we, that they're protected and we know who, who's involved and everything. So, but yeah, great questions. We're going to try to be as, to make it as simple as possible for these organizations. And so if they have them, available already with the other projects or organizations that they've used, that's the current standard that we'll accept. But that is a good question about barriers.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments
Marilyn,
about
can I
this?
ask one other question? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Of course. No, yes,
Sure
please.
thing.
I just had one other question about the cultural equity scoring. Are we going to have, or, I mean, looking at the language of this, I mean, it's pretty broad, which I think is good, but are there going to be specific things that y'all are going to be looking for? I only raise it because, you know, we just went through the other grant applications, and I think part of that consideration hit some long-standing grantees pretty significantly. So I'm just interested in what we're going to necessarily be looking for to prove that we're meeting the cultural equity threshold.
Yeah, actually, and so the inclusion of this and going back to the statement, I mean, it's one of the reasons why, you know, the thought processes and our conversations to include this, you know, were definitely related to just the June allocations, and like, you know, making sure that we have, you know, we're clarifying like what are we looking at, and you know, in what ways. So, you know, now, yeah, so it is broad, and we do have a, you know, we have a range of, you know, points, you know, 1 to 5, and this is with everything as well. So, I mean, I don't have the exact scoring rubric right in front of me. I do have the guidelines in front of me, but basically, you know, we'll have similar to our grant scoring criteria document, which doesn't have cultural equity actual, you know, like exactly in this worded, you know, we have it embedded into our, you know, our organization, but you know, we'll break it down, you know, like a 0 will have, you know, will be nothing, right? No involvement, you know, maybe like a 3 will include involvement of the listed communities, but maybe maybe there's limited voice, you know, there's no leadership position, for example. And then maybe a 5 will be something like, not only is the community involved at every stage of the project, you know, yeah, not only is a community involved, but they're involved in every stage of the project, and they're, you know, so they have a, you know, a voice throughout the process. You know, allocations, who's given what money is, you know, is considered. Of course, visibility. These aren't just, you know, kind of advisors and then other folks get the limelight. What we discovered in some of our kind of looking in on who, even in specifically our Thrive funding, is that while there has been an increase in you know, in communities, individuals who have not been historically represented in arts funding and arts projects, we noticed that the amount of money that those artists received was significantly lower. So things like that we'll look at, you know, like the amount of like the pay for the artist. So we just discovered that. So things like that, like who, again, looking at the budgets, looking at the project plans, and things like that. So those will be some of the criteria that we'll look at that will kind of differentiate between a 0, you know, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Does that make? Or any other questions?
That's helpful. Thank you.
Great.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? Okay. So we need a motion. If anybody would like to make a motion, please raise your hand.
I move to approve. This is Will Cheek.
I'll second. This is Bonnie.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to call for a vote. Let's start with Bunny. I'm going to repeat just in case you didn't hear me. Bonnie?
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's fine, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes, I can. Thank you. Clay?
Yes.
Okay, Jane?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Okay, Okay, I will come back to Mattia. Nikki?
Yes.
Hey, this is
Will?
Marlene. This is Mattia. I didn't hear my name. Sorry. Mattia votes yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Will?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Did you say Sherry? I vote yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marianne?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Did I miss anyone? Sometimes it's hard with so many names. Okay. Thank you so much. So moved. So now we are going to move to action item number 2. Janine?
Great, thank you. And thank you all for the approval. So for the FY21 ABC Awards, the staff and community panel met to review the awards with TAC staff virtually a couple weeks ago, and so these are the results. So just to give a little bit of a summary about the ABC program, for those of you who don't know, it's a grant program designed to provide support for arts projects that broaden the access to arts experiences, address community quality of life issues through the arts, or enhance sustainability of asset-based cultural enterprises. Next slide. And just to give a little extra context, Metro Arts uses these as, to kind of connect with smaller organizations or organizations that haven't been involved with us before. However, we definitely have some organizations who, who have been involved and maybe didn't receive a project grant and are using this to supplement. So it's a really valuable program, and we're so happy to be involved with Tennessee Arts Commission on this as a designated agency. So just to give the overview, this year we're providing $29,376 in ABC grants to 13 organizations. The proposed grants range from $356 to $3,130. So these are small awards. Allocations are 71% to 89% of the original ask, and COVID-19 related social distancing and remote programming plans were addressed during the panel review. Okay, next slide. So you should have a copy of the proposed allocations sheet with all of the organizations and all of the recommended awards and the percent of original request and their scores as well, and the total below. So these have been reviewed and approved by the Metro Arts Grants and Funding Committee, as well as the Tennessee Arts Commission staff. So if approved today, we'll be able to announce tomorrow and begin the contracting process. Next slide. Great. So Grants and Funding Committee recommends the approval of the proposed FY21 Arts Build Community Awards. And so with that, I'll hand back to Mary Elena and Grace.
Thank you so much, Janine. Were there any public comments on this motion submitted by email?
There were not.
Okay. Are there any members of the public present with public comments?
No one is currently present to make a public comment.
Okay. That is the end of public comment for this agenda item. We will no longer be taking comments regarding this subject. Are there any clarifying questions from commissioners about this motion or presentation? Jane.
I just want to move approval.
Okay. Anybody has any questions or comments? Jim, I'm not sure if that's left over from the previous one, but just in case.
Oh, it's left over. I'm sorry. I'll lower my hand.
No, that's okay.
And I'll second the
okay.
motion to approve that Jane did.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to call everybody for a vote if there's no other questions or comments. Bonnie?
I vote yes.
Clay?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marcus? Marcus?
Yes.
Okay. Mattia?
Yes.
Nikki? Yes. Will?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Campbell, do you mind repeating that?
Mrs. Campbell, I vote yes.
Thank you. Jim?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry about that. Motion passes. And now we will move on to action item number 3, and that will be Caroline.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there with us through all the bureaucracy. So we need to update our bylaws to be able to vote on officers at this meeting. Currently, our bylaws state we'll do this in September, but since we don't know if the governor's executive order will be extended beyond August, we just thought it'd be great if we could go ahead and take care of this today. So go to the next slide, I believe has, oh no, sorry. I'm sorry. We're just staying here. Or is this the part? Oh yeah, it does. I'm sorry. So it says September. We're just asking for a temporary change to make it August. So next slide. So we're requesting that the commission approve a temporary change to the commission bylaws, Article 6, Section 4, to allow us to vote on officers at this meeting versus the September meeting. Since this does change our bylaws, we do need a 2/3 of the commission vote. So hopefully we have 10 affirmative votes to be able to make this happen. I'll turn it back to Mary Elena and Grace.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Were there any public comments on this motion submitted by email?
There were not.
Okay, are there any members of the public present with public comments?
No one is present currently to make a public comment.
Okay, that is the end of public comment for this agenda item. We will no longer be taking comments regarding this subject. Are there any clarifying questions for commissioners about this presentation? Jane?
I think that's left over from last time, but I will say I don't know if public, just FYI, I don't know if the governor's going to extend the electronic meetings or not. We're getting a lot of pressure not to, just so you know. If you want me to, I'll make a motion to approve.
Hey, Jane, before you do that.
Will has a question. Yeah.
Hey, Jane, before you do a motion, I was just going to ask, do we want to just amend the bylaws to say no later than September?
We could do that. I think, Will, there are a few other clerical changes and things I might like to bring back to the commission maybe in by October on some other changes. So we could do it then or we could do it now. I'm okay with either.
I just think if we just say no later than September, that gives us the flexibility in case we need to do this at some other time.
Sure.
I'm happy to amend the motion to that if amend my motion to no later than September.
I'll second. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, I'm sorry, who's second?
I think Will was the second.
Okay.
Will.
Okay.
Will Cheek.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If anybody, I don't see anybody else. Okay, so I will just call for a vote. I'm going to start with Bonnie.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you. Clay?
Approve. Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Mattia?
Aye.
Nikki? Yes. Will?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Motion passes. And so since that item passed, we will now move on to action item number 4, and I will pass it back to Caroline.
Great, thank you. So we will now look at officers and the committee slate. If you'll go to the next slide. Obviously, officers of the commission are chair, vice chair, and secretary. The next slide, I think, just shows you what the duties are. The chair will preside over meetings and be responsible for general administration. Vice chair will serve in this capacity when the chair is unavailable. And the secretary being responsible for meeting minutes, which may be delegated to a staff person, which is typically how that works. Next slide. The terms of office are 1 year, and no executive board member may serve longer than 2 years in the same position. So unfortunately, Mary Elena has been, I guess fortunate for us, she's been doing this for 2 years and has done a great job, but she won't be eligible to continue in that role. So we'll be nominating a new chair. Each officer's term will start in November. So that's when things switch over after this vote. Okay, next slide. So the nominating committee was made up of Jane Alvis, Nikki Kaufman, and Paula Roberts. They met on August 12th to vote on the officers' slate. Go to the next slide, please. So in our bylaws, which we just adopted these last year, so this kind of calls out the nominating committee, their job, the criteria they're looking at for nominations, interest in serving, attendance, participation, responsiveness. So the next slide, we will have our officer slate that they are recommending, which would be Jim Schmidt as chair, Mattia Powell as vice chair, and Will as secretary. So that is, if you go to the next slide, I think it just has the action, or no, I'm sorry, it goes into committees. We'll just, does anybody have any questions about the officer slate before I move forward? Okay, we'll go on to committees. If you go to that next slide, it just talks about composition of standing committees. So we'll look at that today. And then these are appointed by the chair, but we went ahead and wrapped it into this action just to make sure we've checked all the boxes. And committee members may serve for 1 year, but they may be reappointed on a year-to-year basis. So the next slide is the roster, which I believe you also have in your packet. And I think I've spoken to most of you about this over the last couple weeks. So the next slide would be the action. The nominating committee recommending the approval of the executive officer slate. The chair is recommending the approval of the committee roster and assignments. And that's it. So I'll turn it back to Mary Elena.
Thank you, Caroline. Were there any public comments on these motions submitted by email?
There was not.
Are there any members of the public present with comments?
No one is current presently.
Okay, that is the end of public comments for this agenda. We will no longer be taking calls regarding this subject. Are there any clarifying questions or comments from commissioners? Okay, so if there's no comments or questions, we need a motion.
I move that we approve the officer slate and the committee roster. This is Bonnie.
Thank you so much. We need a second.
I move to second. This is Campbell.
Thank you so much. And if there's no other further comments or discussions, I'm sorry about that. I will go ahead and call for a vote. I'm going to start with Bonnie.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Bonnie. Can you repeat that?
Oh, I vote yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I can. Thank you. Clay?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Mattia?
Yes.
Nikki?
Yes.
Will?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes.
Campbell?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. The motion passes. Thank you, Caroline. And now we will move on to action number 5. I will pass the meeting to Ian.
Hi, this is basically to formalize a process for the executive director reviews. And basically in Metro, there are no set standards for executive evaluations in any boards or commissions. So may I have the next slide, please? Basically, so because there were no set standards, the staff has come together to design a process that can be used year after year. And so the process that we've kind of thought might make most sense would be the commission would delegate the performance of the review to for the executive director to the chair. Commissioners at that point would have an opportunity to send their input to the chair for any kind of comments on the evaluation. What we're proposing is that after this meeting, commissioners would have till September 4th to submit their comments. At that point, the chair would be they would submit that to me, Ian Myers, and then I would forward to the chair for input into the review. The chair would report back at a subsequent meeting to basically give input on the evaluation itself. And next slide, please. So basically the action is to grant delegation to Chair Marielena Ramos to complete the executive director performance review. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Okay. Grace, were there any public comments on this motion submitted by email?
There were not.
Okay. Are there any members of the public present with public comments?
There are not.
Okay. And I believe, well, that is the end of the public comment for this agenda. We will no longer be taking calls regarding this subject. And I believe Clay has a comment or question.
Yeah, Ian, can you talk about how this has differed from the process over the last few years? You know, I recall that we've done everything from actually going into an executive session and allowing commissioners to stick around afterwards and actually physically writing that out. And now it sounds like we're going to a process where those comments are sent to you individually.
And that's a great question, Clay. I really appreciate that. And basically, in these kind of executive sessions, it's sort of a chicken versus egg situation. Basically, at that point, the chair has usually already written the review, and the comments don't really get to be fed into the evaluation itself. So this gives the opportunity to have direct commissioner feedback and evaluation critique to be provided and inputted into their evaluation before it's accepted. And these comments would also be held for public review at any point. They're considered public documents, that any of the comments that I receive.
And sorry, just to go a little bit deeper, and we think that the method of just sending those via email is a preferred method over actually our commission deliberating over that in person?
I think it would probably get more qualitative results because just given the time frame of commission meetings themselves, there's so little time to hash out the actual review.
Can I jump in, Ian? I think Justin's on the line with Metro Legal. I believe we've been discouraged from any executive sessions, really, unless there's, I don't even know what the categories are. I can't remember, but I think that's why we're at this moment, but I could be wrong.
That's correct. This is a public forum. The executive sessions are not allowed for the board to deliberate. As such, that we wouldn't be able to go into an executive session for this. I would also note that there are requirements under the bylaws as to the executive committee is delegated that has to conduct an evaluation of the executive director and submit a report to the commission. My understanding is this is formulated in how Ian is suggesting that the evaluation be processed.
I think that it's absolutely important that we reform how we go about evaluating these performance reviews. And in order to facilitate that, I think it would be really helpful as a commissioner to, I don't know if you're planning on sending out specific questions that you want us to answer or kind of what the rubric is. And I know that all of this has to fall within the Metro approved form, which gives you about 3 lines to do that. And it's kind of really almost overly generic questions based upon my remembrance of it. It might have been updated in the last couple of years. But if we're going to reform this process, I would like to see, and I think we should reform this process. I'd like us to go through the entirety of that. And maybe that's where we land, but I'd like it to be more than just us sending you like, hey, what do you think about Caroline via email?
Yeah. I know Sherry has a question or comment as well.
Yeah, I think Clay actually asked the question, but let me just add something to it. This evaluation and review, is this compulsory for all commissioners to submit, or do we have the option to opt out, or is that something that you've done in the past, or are we all inputting our information? That's, I guess, my question.
I basically would feel, I think that is up to the commissioner to submit as they feel. If they feel like you can provide specific inputs that would be helpful to the chair, I think that would be the best to have that input. But if you don't have any particular input, you could, not submit anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Jane, do you have a question or comment?
No, I'm sorry. I don't know how to undo my hand. Sorry.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions or comments about this process or this action item?
And I can actually email every one of you to make sure that you have my correct email address, and that way you're able to respond to me. And I could also kind of email the last evaluation so you have sort of a template to comment on.
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea, Ian. If nobody else has any questions or comments, we need a motion.
This is Commissioner Busey. When will we, just one last question, when will we be receiving these via email, Ian? Will that be in the near future, the evaluation and review?
Yes, since basically after this action, whatever the determination is, I can email you after the meeting, and that way you have that opportunity, the window to submit comments up until the end of the day on the 4th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there's no other questions or comments, we need a motion.
This is Jim. I'll make the motion to grant delegation to the chair to complete the executive director performance review.
And this is Commissioner Busey, and I will second.
Okay. Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I will call everybody for a vote. I'm going to start with Bonnie.
I vote yes.
Clay?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Marcus?
Yes.
Mattia?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Nikki? Yes. Will?
Yes.
Hope?
Yes,
Thank you. Campbell?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Sherry?
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Motion passes. That concludes our action items. I will now hand the meeting over to Caroline for some operational updates.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have a few important updates. If you'll go to the next slide, I want to welcome a new employee. Marissa LaRoe is joining us as our new program and evaluation coordinator on the strategic funding and initiatives team. She is coming to us with a grants background. She was formerly the director of grants at a social service nonprofit and worked in a lot of different types of programs. She has an arts background, an MFA in creative writing, and I believe she's also a yoga instructor. We're really excited to have her joining the grants team, which Janine has sort of been holding on her own with help from Grace since the spring. So that's really exciting. She is actually, her position is supported by the National Endowment Grant that we received with the CARES Act funding, and also the lifting of the hiring freeze that happened on July 1st. So we will welcome Marissa.
Welcome.
Yes, thank you. So I think that's all the ones that involve slides, but I wanted to update the commission that we were approached in, I guess back in June, and I think I talked to a couple of commissioners about this as well, about a potential Black Lives Matter mural that had been a lot of people have been talking about and sort of interested in the community. And we were asked by the mayor's office to participate in some conversations about that. We sort of were serving in a technical advisory role. We provided our mural guide that we've developed, also our process for temporary artwork on the Metro right-of-way, just as sort of technical information. I guess in the last couple weeks, since maybe the 1st of August or so, Council Lady Sharon Hurt reached out to me about if Metro Arts could fund this initiative. And I shared that, our temporary public art funds are very limited, and due to the, $200,000 cut that we took in our operational budget, we only have $50,000 left that we can spend on temporary public art, which is designated for the Cossie Gardner Park on Jefferson Street.
Oh,
so
now I know what we're talking about.
That is, because most other public artwork is paid for through our percent fund, but this would be considered temporary. So we're, quite limited. However, I said, Thrive is an opportunity if that's of interest to the community to apply for funding that way. And that opens up, obviously, after this meeting. We could also discuss reallocating funds if we really feel like, we don't want to do Cossie Gardner, but we wanted to figure out a way to support this. That's a possible conversation, but it would have to go through our public art process, which involves, the Public Art Committee and the Commission. So no further requests at this point have been made of our office, although it was discussed in last week's Minority Caucus meeting, but we were not in attendance at that. And then a few, media hits, stories after that. And it was sort of indicated that we were not being supportive of this initiative. And I wanted to clarify publicly that we have been supportive. We've not been asked by the administration to take this on or to manage it as a public art project or fund it, but we have provided technical expertise and sort of shared the avenues whereby it could happen. So we have public art rules, we have, everything has to come through a public meeting and, procurement procedures. So I just wanted to make you aware of that conversation that's happening and, answer any questions if you had any. I just felt like it was a bit of an unfair characterization that we were not being supportive, but we're open to conversations about it. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you reaching out to the Minority Caucus to make sure that they knew your position, and when it comes to this particular mural and the project and the willingness from the commission to be part of the project. So I thank you for reaching out to them and making sure that the conversation continues to flow and they know where we stand. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I think, there's a lot of technical considerations. These murals have happened in the street in a lot of cities, but that was, back in May, June, when a lot of streets were closed. We've been in close conversation with Public Works about it. And, their concern is safety. If we have a street closure for a mural like this, it would likely need to stay closed because you don't want people moving into the street to take selfies and, kind of with cars and traffic. So there's a lot to figure out and a lot of interest from the community and a lot of different groups that are, working on this. So I just, want to say we're here to help in whatever, appropriate way we can help. But, we do have a lot of process, and that tends to slow some of these things down. And I appreciate that is frustrating to some, community members. But I wanted to just let you know. The next point I have, if we're good on that, I didn't see any other. I think, Sherry, your hand may be up from previously, I'm guessing. Okay, well, I'll go forward, but we can talk more if we need to. There is, I think you probably heard, the mayoral appointed COVID funding committee that's allocating the $121 million that the city received in, sort of CARES Act funding. I did send a proposal to the mayor's office back in June about, supporting the arts and culture sector through this funding. Many other cities, I would say almost every major city or mid-sized city has allocated at least $1 million, if not more. I mean, Austin allocated $5 million. Sacramento has allocated $20 million just for arts and culture and artists. LA just approved $10 million. So I think it's there's certainly precedent for this. So I sent the proposal in. They're actually meeting right now, and I obviously could not be there and here at the same time. So Alan Valentine is speaking on behalf of the arts and culture sector and Nashville Arts Coalition to sort of provide additional information on that proposal. So hopefully, if we're lucky, there will be some designation of funds for the arts sector. We know that they are hurting badly. I mean, we're in survival mode. I think we've lost, so many positions, so many layoffs, and up into the tens of millions of dollars in revenue loss since, May and March, or I guess back in March. So we have all that data. We provided it. I'm happy to provide that to you as well if you have an interest. I think I'll just keep moving through unless somebody raises their hand. Public art maintenance, we wanted to make you aware that the light meander sculpture on the riverfront is undergoing some substantial work. The whole lighting system was basically fried, so it had to be completely redone. So Ann Leslie's been hard at work down there on the riverfront, making sure those lights are working. We also were finally at a point in procurement land where we have a lighting designer who can work on the sticks lighting in the roundabout. Many of you have mentioned it to me, and lots of people have. It's sort of low lit, like it just doesn't have enough light on it, especially when you're driving around it at night. So that's something we have been working on, but it's been a slow process. Next, we are going to talk about our next meeting. As has been mentioned, the governor's executive order it's uncertain if it will be extended beyond August. So we're doing our best to avoid a September meeting. It looks like we tried to squish all of our action items into today, unless we do have some of those COVID funds on our way, and we need to have some meetings around that. But please reach out to Grace if you have particular concerns, if we do have to have an in-person meeting, or if you have specific requests for accommodations. Of course, we're going to try to make any meetings as safe as possible. If you feel like you just couldn't, under any circumstances, come to an in-person meeting, also let us know that so we can make plans for whatever needs to happen. I think, Will, you have a hand up.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay. So that is the end of my updates. Does anybody have any thoughts, questions?
Hey, I do have a thought, Caroline. I know that Paula has got a conflict with several of our meetings going forward. She's teaching, is it this semester? I was wondering if maybe we could send out a survey to see if, at least for the next few meetings, to the extent we have meetings, we might find a different time so we can accommodate her schedule this semester.
Great, we can do that. We can, maybe we'll couple that with a survey just about social distancing, comfort levels, and meeting in person, and then the time, if everyone's okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, great. I think that's the end of my updates, unless anybody has any questions for me. I can turn it back to Mary Elena.
Well, anybody has any other questions or comments before we end this meeting? Okay, well, it was good to see most of you. I haven't seen your faces in such a long time, so it was great, and I'm sorry for all the technical problems on my end. Thank you for your patience, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Take
Thank
care.
you.